Hello, and welcome to What is Innovation, the podcast that explores the reality of a word that is in danger of losing its meaning altogether. This podcast is produced by Outlast Consulting, LLC, a boutique consultancy that helps companies use innovation principles to solve their toughest business problems. I'm your host, Jared Simmons, and I'm so excited to have David A. Fields. Consultant, speaker, and best-selling author, David A. Fields helps build consulting practices that are lucrative and lifestyle friendly. He's the author of Amazon's highest-rated book on the business of consulting and has guided consultancies ranging from hundreds of millions of dollars down to one-person startups. David, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Jared, I am thrilled to be on this show with you today.
Hey, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, get your thoughts on innovation.
All right, lay it on me.
All right, here we go. So, first question, what is innovation?
That's kind of a deep question, man. Okay, so what is innovation? That's an interesting idea. I'll give you my point of view on it because you asked me.
Sure.
And I'll create a distinction in there. Okay, so first of all, I think there are a couple of important distinctions. Mm-hmm. There's innovation, which is just new, and then there's innovation, which is actually useful. So I want to talk about useful innovation.
Right.
And I think there's actually another distinction, which is innovation that is an improvement versus innovation that's breakthrough.
Okay.
And for me, that distinction is important because I typically will guide people to be evolutionary more than revolutionary, to have innovation that's an improvement as opposed to innovation that's a breakthrough.
Right.
And that's because innovation that's more evolutionary is more likely to win business. You know that people want it. But we can talk about that later.
Sure.
But I think basically innovation is anything that allows people to accomplish something they weren't able to before.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to think of that again in four categories. They can get more of something that they want more of with the same or less effort, or they can reduce something they want less of with the same or less effort. They can improve somehow, or they create something, or they're able to accomplish something entirely new. So increase, decrease, improve, new. Those are kind of the four buckets I think in.
Sure.
When I think of innovation. And any of those that actually deliver more value to whoever's using your product or your service. Is there anything else other than products and services?
I think that's all we've got in the world right now.
Product and service, then I think you've created an innovation.
Right.
So you can create a lot that's new. Unless it actually helps someone in one of those four buckets, I think it's just new for new. It's not useful innovation.
Right.
Now, how does that fit with how you think about innovation?
You know, David, I think that it's spot on with the way I've been trained and my personal view on innovation. The industry is full of language and different words for it. I love your framing and your phrasing. Some people will describe innovation in buckets in terms of cost innovation versus product innovation versus services versus marketing innovation, things like that. But I think the beauty of your buckets is that it's easy to remember, it's useful, as you know. Your description of innovation fits your description of innovation. Actually, it's useful.
It's actually useful.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other aspect of it is it leaves space for people to have different definitions of innovation, but still be making progress. So what I mean by that is a lot of times companies and organizations get stuck on, well, is this innovation? Is this not innovation? Should this come out of our innovation team? Should this come out of the current business team? Where should this fit? And I think that your structure takes that off the table and says, look, there are different kinds of innovation.
If you take all of that politics off the table, where's the fun? I'm just kidding, of course. You're right. It's so interesting, right? Different perspectives, cost innovation, marketing innovation. To me, those are all hows, right? That's thinking about, well, how do we accomplish some innovation, or what sort of bucket, as opposed to end benefit.
Right.
Customer focused, market focused. What does the market want more of? What does the market want less of?
Right. Right.
What is the market missing? What does the market have now but could be improved because there's some element that's not quite right?
Mm. That's well said, and it sparks the thought about the way you design your organization. And I know you consult with giant companies and small companies. To me, the way you construct your organization around improvement, whether it's incremental or breakthrough, almost structures your thinking around innovation.
Yeah.
Almost biases your perspective on it. And I can imagine it might hinder, your 4-box kind of view of the world. It might hinder you from being able to play in all 4 boxes.
Well, I'm not sure you can play in all 4.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself would be an interesting sort of rabbit hole to scurry down.
Sure.
Because anytime you try to do everything, right? Every time you say, oh, look, there's 4 boxes, let's do all 4 boxes, you're setting yourself up for trouble.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to saying, let's take 1 box. If we think about our market, if we think about our customers, what do they want less of? And you focus on that, just that one area, you can come up with a lot of innovations. You can come up with a lot of ways to make your customers happier, to create value for them by reducing something. What do they want less of? Well, they want to fuel their cars less, or they want less weight in something. They want less wait times. They want and then you start to think, okay, now how can we create that end result? To me, that works better than saying, okay, let's do 1 in each box. Let's make sure we've got 1 in each bucket.
And that's the corporate approach to innovation. So your approach makes perfect sense. And I'm sure the more progress-inducing approach.
What's the corporate version?
What typically happens is the corporate version is we've got these 4 buckets, these 4 boxes. This department takes this box. This department takes this box. This team takes that box. And we work all 4 at the same time on the same product. And sometimes, I have conversations with companies just simply saying, look, this is one product on the shelf.
Yeah.
And you've got 8 different projects improving it or changing it in some way from 8 different perspectives. And I think, to your point, a more sequential approach, saying you're playing in this box doesn't mean you're not going to play in the other 3 at some point.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't get extra points for completing every box.
Right.
You get extra points for satisfying your customer more, for making them happier, for meeting a need.
Exactly.
Can I throw in one other idea, maybe take us down a slightly different direction?
Yeah, please.
Because this idea of kind of having things in different buckets. One place where I do think that's valid and useful is in the portfolio. Thinking about your innovation as a portfolio. Now, this is obviously an area where you know much more than I do, Jared. My understanding of this, and my thinking about this, is very much shaped by Brad Casper, who used to be the CEO of Dial. And he led Dial during years when they had a lot of innovation, a lot of product innovation.
Yeah.
And we had conversations about that. He's just a lovely human being, by the way. And we had conversations about his thinking around it. And he said he always tried to keep a portfolio where some of his projects, some of the innovation, if you will, that they were working on was truly evolutionary. Little incremental changes. We'll have a raspberry flavor.
Right.
We'll have that kind of thing.
Right.
And then some projects that were revolutionary. And those were things that were, more of a big change. And then some projects that were market making.
Oh, interesting. Right.
Meaning, so those were his 3 buckets. And if you think about it, you would say, really what you want is about 70% of your effort to be on evolutionary.
Right.
Because that's the most likely to succeed.
Right. That's going to keep the lights on.
Yeah. It's not going to win accolades.
Right.
However, it will win customers and keep you ahead of competition.
Right.
And you have maybe 20% to 25% of your effort on some sort of revolutionary kind of breakthrough ideas for your category. And And then maybe 5% is in a skunk works somewhere,
Right.
where they're just trying to create something utterly new,
Right.
not an improvement, something utterly new.
Right.
And that idea of keeping a balanced portfolio all the time, I think is a really interesting one.
It is interesting, and it works. I've seen it work in multiple industries and categories, product, service. It works well with two caveats, and you would assume these yourself, kind of going in. But the first is these are discrete activities operating in discrete spaces. And the failure mode on that one is, I worked at Coca-Cola, so I'll pick on Coke. If you take a 20 ounce or 16.9 ounce Coca-Cola bottle that's on the shelf, you cannot do evolutionary, revolutionary, and market making work on that SKU at the same time, because the people that are working on the label and the bottle and the formulation and the cap and the route to market, their efforts are nullified because they are all trying to operate on the same product. Now, I would imagine the CEO of Dial did not have that point of view.
You're not just saying the same SKU, you're saying the same SKU by the same people.
Right. Well, what the problem in most corporations, the P&L, the dollars come from certain places. And so the focus goes to the places where the money flows from and to. And so when you have the evolutionary, keep the lights on, stay a step ahead of the competition stuff, not getting the same sort of focus as the, get on the cover of Forbes or Fortune for this revolutionary or market making stuff. The talent gets out of balance, the focus gets out of balance, and you have these big home run swings obviating the small singles and doubles that you need to keep the lights on. And suddenly you miss with your home run swing and you fall behind instead.
Well, I think that's why he said you always need to keep that balanced.
Right.
They all need to be rewarded. They all need to be funded and protected and nurtured at the appropriate levels.
Correct. And it needs to be portfolio driven. So at Dial, it sounds like it was at the portfolio level. The challenge comes when it's a brand manager in charge of one brand, in charge of Pampers, or in charge of Coca-Cola, or in charge of X, insert any brand here, even a service line at a consulting firm. When you try to do all three things to one product, it makes the strategic intent of each of those individual items difficult to achieve at the same time, because you're operating at cross purposes.
Yeah. I think that's interesting, actually. I mean, to me, that would be something worth exploring, whether I think you're right, especially if there's an individual who's in charge of it. To do all of those at once is challenging. It creates a really interesting tension, though. Right? And does that stretch the same person in different ways? If someone's working on, and I don't know the answer to this, by the way, if someone's working on evolutionary projects and you say, also tackle some revolutionary, I want you to do both. I want you to do evolutionary, I want you to do revolutionary on your particular line of business. Does the revolutionary energy, and say, here's what I want you to do. I want you to spend 1 day a week on your revolutionary stuff, and I want you to spend 4 days a week on your evolutionary. Yeah, just to make things easy. This obviously isn't how real world works.
Oh, right.
I wonder whether the time spent on the revolutionary projects would color and improve and somehow lift the evolutionary projects. I have absolutely no idea. I have no evidence to support that. It's just so hopefully one of your listeners has done this and will say,
great.
Yeah, hey, Jared, that's exactly what we did. And it was hugely successful. Or we tried it and David's out of his mind.
Right.
Either one of those would be awesome to hear. So hopefully someone will feed back.
Yeah, I hope so. That was a great rabbit hole to go down for a number of reasons. But if for nothing else, I think the portfolio versus product distinction around innovation is an important thing for people to wrap their heads around, because in Fortune magazine and Forbes and things, they're having a portfolio conversation. And if you as a startup try to apply that to your one product, you're going to burn yourself out. If you're trying to take home run swings and hit singles and doubles, and you've got 2 SKUs, or you've got one service that you provide to one customer or one type of customer, you're going to burn the customer out, the audience out, and you're going to burn yourself out in the process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good advice.
Thank you, David. Let's shift gears. So that's what innovation is.
Okay.
What isn't innovation?
I would imagine if you ask a lot of people this question, that you get mostly the same answers, which is what innovation isn't is doing a bunch of new stuff that doesn't actually add value.
Yep.
Right. I mean,
Yep.
I think that would be kind of the classic answer.
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you exactly how smart I am. Okay. This is a demonstration. So for anybody who's listening, who's thinking, God, maybe I was thinking of working with David, this will convince you otherwise. Okay. So one of our clients years ago, before I was working with consulting firms. So when my work was with corporations, one of our big clients was Kodak.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also going to date myself here. And so I was working with Kodak, and they're starting to say, I wonder if we could put a camera on a phone.
Mm.
And I, of course, raised my hand and say, what a stupid idea. Who the hell wants a camera on their phone? I use my phone to talk.
Right.
I don't take pictures all the time. Right. So again, I'm just showing, how much I missed that one.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of extraordinary. Now, your mobile phone is really just a mobile camera that happens to have a phone attached to it.
Yes, exactly.
But be that as it may, in Kodak,
Mm-hmm.
one of the challenges that they had for years and years and years, being an engineering run kind of company, is they would add features that nobody wanted.
Mm. Yep.
They were famous for just adding features nobody cared.
Right.
And that's not innovation.
Got it. Yeah, features for feature's sake. That's a great example of what isn't innovation. And I think the challenge is it's well-intentioned. It's just it's not guided. It's not misguided. It's guided by the wrong thing.
Exactly, by the wrong North Star, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to the wrong thing.
Right.
That's looking around the room as opposed to looking out the window. Out the window is the real world. Out the window are your customers.
Mm.
Those are the people you need to listen to. Those are the people you need to look at. And what happens is we tend to listen to the people inside our walls.
Mm-hmm.
Or we look in the mirror and say, well, that person's got a smart idea.
Right.
Yeah, maybe, but who cares? It only matters if someone on the other side of the window, someone from the outside thinks your idea is smart.
Mm. Yes, well said. And I think the other place technical folks tend to look is at the patent office.
Oh yeah.
And if the patent office says it's innovative and here's your stamp of approval, your patent, then the consumer can say whatever they want. The marketing folks can say whatever they want. I've got a patent on my wall and a plaque that says this was innovation.
Damn straight. And I get that. I really do. I do too. It's impressive that you brought that out because I wouldn't have thought of that. But you're absolutely right. If you can get a patent, that shows I've done something. I've created something new.
Mm-hmm.
Was it useful? Don't know. Who cares? But I got to create something. And so therefore I have a legacy.
Right.
I can understand that motivation. And from an individual standpoint, from a human standpoint, I really get that and I respect that.
Right.
From a business standpoint, I don't care.
Exactly.
Right. It doesn't matter whether you've got a legacy as an individual. It just matters, are you able to satisfy customer needs better than any other alternative?
Right. That's exactly right. And that's what keeps the lights on. That's what pays the salary of the technician who's in the lab coming up with the thing to get the patent.
Yeah.
And that value chain, that value loop, when you don't understand how it actually works, that's when things start to break down. But yeah, I was that engineer trying to find a way to get a patent.
Did you get any?
No, I was involved in a lot of applications,
right.
But I did not stay at Procter long enough to see if they panned out or not.
All right.
It's a very long process, applying for and receiving a patent.
Yeah.
It is not easy. And like you said, I respect that effort. It's just dangerous when that becomes the pursuit.
Right. And a lot of engineers,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of inventors become overly enamored of their own inventions.
Right.
Because what they see is the benefit, the difference somehow of what's better in their version of better, some metric better than the existing, as opposed to what the market wants.
Right.
All about the market.
Right. David, do you think we've talked a bit about technologists and the sort of concrete inventions?
All right.
Talk to me about frameworks. I would imagine for consultants, frameworks can have the same kind of allure as, patents and technical novelty.
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge fan of frameworks. I think
Right.
Framing and reframing are extraordinarily powerful techniques for winning business and for helping your clients.
Right.
Is it possible to develop frameworks that are innovative and useless? I'm pretty sure I demonstrate that every day. The amount of work that ends up on the cutting room floor when it just comes to ideas about framing and helping people think through their business. It's my office. My ceiling used to be 14 feet. It's down to about 8 feet because it's all just piled up. Like the floor has risen with all the nonsense. I was on a call with a consulting firm last week, and we're trying to work through how to communicate their service. And the way they were communicating, it did not work.
Right.
And so we went through it, and I said, let's try this. Let's give this a try. Put a circle. That's the core of your idea. And then what I see kind of these 5 arrows coming in. These are the big things. And then you've got this environment around. So we built that out and looked at it and said, okay, that doesn't work at all.
Right.
And a lot of that happens. I think, and this may be true for any kind of innovation, certainly for the thinking, for thought-based just frameworks, sort of intellectual products. There's a lot of experimentation. You have to try a lot of ideas. And what I do see is folks try too few.
Okay. That's good perspective. Because when you look at your blog posts or read your book, it feels like, oh, this guy just gets it. Like he rolls out of bed and creates these simple, elegant, useful frameworks. And I'm sure that was, that's exactly what he intended. And, that was the first thing that popped in his head.
Yeah. Well, no. So, there's some truth to it, right? Everybody has particular talents.
Right.
I'm a framing person. So one of my best friends basically says, you wake up in the morning, you kind of just like vomit out frameworks and models.
Right.
And that's true. And some just don't work.
Right.
The framework that anchored my first book, which is not the book that you probably know as well, but the one that anchored my first book, I used that in a sample chapter when I was shopping the book around, or my agent was shopping the book around, and McGraw-Hill ended up publishing that book. That entire model and that chapter never made it into the book.
Wow. So between the pitch and the book actually being written,
right,
the fundamental framework for the pitch
fell out. Exactly. Wow. The one for the pitch, I could not get it to work in a way that to me actually was clear enough and helpful enough for readers.
How are you able to sort of step back from your framework to ask yourself that question?
Well, there's 2 answers to that. Well, one is you always have to return to the root question. What question am I trying to answer?
Okay.
Does this get them there? Because the same thing happens in my weekly article, by the way. I'll start off with an idea, and sometimes it'll go wandering around. Like we've gone down a couple of little tangents, and I'll go wandering around my writing, and I have to return and say, what question am I trying to answer? Or what useful piece of information am I trying to impart to the reader? Is this doing that?
Okay.
And then I start stripping away everything that's not attached. So that's one answer, is you do have to step aside and remember, what's the point here?
Right.
The other is I don't do it myself.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah.
Right. I have an editor, and I go out to other people.
Right.
The reason that chapter got cut is I tried it. I rewrote it 3 times. I kept sending it to beta readers, and they were like, I don't get it. Okay, well, if you don't get it, then it's not good.
Right.
Doesn't matter how much I like it. Doesn't matter that I sold the book based on it. It's not good.
Right.
I cut it.
So for people who for whom their stock and trade is their knowledge, their expertise in a certain field,
Yes.
what they know and how they can apply it. I can imagine for your clients, it's hard for them to be able to sort of step back from what they know and how they think about it to ask that broader question of, does this meet my client where they are?
Yeah, I would probably put that difficulty at about the same level as holding your breath overnight.
Wow.
It's nigh on impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
To get people to truly let go of their, in some ways, their current identity.
Hmm.
When you develop an intellectual product, you're pouring your thoughts and who you are into that idea. Those are your ideas.
Right.
To completely drop them, or to drop all of your experience, you've worked 25 years in an industry, to walk away from that is, I rarely see it. Almost never.
Right.
It's just extraordinarily difficult. And that's unfortunate, because that's what holds most people back. What holds people back isn't the opportunity. What holds people back is they're anchored to their past.
Right.
They're anchored to whatever their own identity is that they've created around themselves. This is what I do. This is how I do it. This is what I know. This is how I think.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are able to let go of that, which I think is a somewhat trainable skill, you open yourself up as an individual, and you open up your business for a huge opportunity.
Right.
Sorry, I went waxing philosophical.
No. It just created so many more rabbit holes just popped up all over. But the main thing that brings me back to is the role of a coach or a consultant or some sort of external, could be a trusted friend or whomever, but a role of someone to kind of play that external view back to you to help you sort of process that, because it can be an anchor or it can be a foundation. And I think the past, that is, in your experience.
Or both.
Yeah, or both. And so I think helping people think in an innovative way, bring an innovation mindset to that mode of thinking, their past, their experiences, those sorts of things. How do I look at that in a way that's new? And is the way I'm looking at it useful? Those sorts of things. That's a hard thing to do for yourself.
Yeah, almost impossible.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard, though I think it is trainable. I think your facility with it, your ability to make progress is multiplied, is improved exponentially by getting help.
Right.
I am extraordinarily reliant on help. I'm extraordinarily reliant on my editor to look and at what I write and say, I don't get it. Which, by the way, is the worst job in the world, because it was clear to me. So I'm saying, what do you mean you don't get it?
Right.
This is obvious as the day is long.
Right.
But if my editor says, well, maybe to you, then I have to step back and say, oh, I guess I wasn't clear. And 100 times out of 100, my editor was right. And I can improve what I did by letting go of what I think and reacting to what someone else thinks.
I'm hearing humility and, an openness to feedback and a willingness to see things from a different perspective.
Yeah, not always right away.
No.
First I have to kick, scream, yell, and curse and say, what are you thinking?
Right.
All my stuff is perfect.
Right.
How dare you insinuate I got something wrong? After I've had my temper tantrum, then I'll go, okay, you were right.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give any impression that I'm, have this, huge amount of humility and willingness to take feedback graciously.
Sure. No, I'm just glad that's part of your process too.
Exactly.
That's part of my process with you, So that's a relief. It's not where you start, it's where you end up, right?
There you go.
David, one last question.
Yeah.
What advice, and we've kind of blended, you've been offering, thoughts and perspective on things along the way, but what advice would you have for innovators? And in particular, I'm thinking a lot about your unique view on innovation and value and the kind of customer back or client back view of things.
Right.
What advice would you have for innovators?
What advice do I have? Okay, so you know that my number one rule in consulting, principle number one, Well, principle number one is don't let principles get in the way of business. But the principle number two
Good.
is for consulting. I always say consulting is not about you. Consulting is about the client. And my guess is that applies to most business and certainly most innovation. It's not about you. It's not about the patent on the wall. It's not about your product. It's not about what you want to do. It's just not about you. It's about the customer. So if you make it about the customer, you're more likely to succeed. That means listen to the customer, watch the customer, don't edit the customer, at least at first, just take in the raw data and understand. So that would be one piece of advice. There's a caveat in here. Well, it's semi-caveat. We talked, I think, back in the beginning, kind of like evolutionary versus totally market making and market following. There's certainly some validity in the concern or the complaint that if I am just listening to my market, my innovations are not going to be particularly innovative. They're not going to be groundbreaking. It's the Henry Ford, if I asked customers what they wanted, they'd say a faster horse.
Right.
So there's some validity to that. However, I would also suggest that folks who are using that as an excuse not to pay attention to the market are misguiding themselves. Because it's not about listening to customers and saying, what do you want? And they say, I want a faster horse. It's what are you trying to achieve? I'm trying to get from A to B. I'm trying to get from here to Milwaukee. Okay, what would you want more of? What would you want less of? What would you like to improve? What would be totally new for you? Well, what I would like more of is I'd like more comfort on my way to Milwaukee. I would like it to take less time. I would like it to be faster. I'd like to be able to do it with my whole family. Well, now you start to say, okay, so what are some innovations that I can come up with which solve those problems? And you may end up with an automobile.
Right.
So it's still listening to the market, but it's listening not to what the market says they want, though that is extremely important. It's what are they trying to achieve? What are their aspirations? And what problems are they trying to solve? And if you hone in on that, then I think you have a chance to truly be innovative.
Brilliant. No, that's a great call out as a piece of advice because you're right. That is a spot where people tend to back away from the consumer and say, oh, I'm going to make a vacuum cleaner. So I'm going to go look at grain silos like Dyson did, or, I'm not going to talk to people who are using vacuums because that's going to get me a different, another thing. And it's the difference, I think, between listening and hearing. If you listen to people at certain levels, and, there's all kinds of terminology around listening that I'm not an expert in, but it's a different depth of listening that gets you to the problems the articulated and unarticulated needs of a consumer versus what they're asking for. Right.
Well said.
Let them ask for a faster horse and hear what's behind that.
Yeah. Or ask why, all those kind of stuff.
Ask why and get where you want to go.
Excellent.
David, this has been, as usual, enlightening, encouraging, educational, and I thank you for your time and your mentorship and your willingness to join us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I just want to call out for your listeners that if I sound intelligent throughout this, that's because Jared has cut out all the dumb things that were said along the way.
That is brilliant.
And I am truly appreciative of that. So thank you, Jared. It's been a lot of fun.
My pleasure. I'll just, sweep aside all the clippings from my errors on the cutting room floor here. Have a great day, David.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this week's show. You can drop us a line on Twitter at Outlast LLC, OUTLAST LLC, or follow us on LinkedIn where we're Outlast Consulting. Until next time, keep innovating, whatever that means.